All right, hello everybody. We are still waiting for a couple more to log in here, and then we'll get started here shortly. Thank you. All right. Well, Brian, if you're ready, I'll go ahead and launch. And if more people join, I'll just let them in as they go into the waiting room.
Yeah, I'm cool.
Okay, right on. Let me just. Oh, we got about 1 minute. This song, I forgot we're on the radio as well. So this song's gonna end, and then I'll bring it on after that.
Okay. Hold on.
Well, wait.
We had lost the light.
Why don't you bet? You should ignore that. They can't hold up.
Hold on, Tyler.
They can't hold up the show.
No problem. Will you be ready in 30 seconds, Brian?
We're looking for an outlet. Something happened with the light, so.
Okay.
Is it that different without it?
Not on yet. That's.
All right, no problem. We can wait. I'll go to another song and fade it down when you're ready.
Different without it.
Cool.
All good now?
You're wrong. That's cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to bring us on. Here we go. KXFM radio on 104.7 here in Laguna Beach. I'm Tyler Russell, also online at kxfmradio.org and on Zoom right now for a very, very special event. I'm really excited to welcome, by the way, if you want to join our Zoom link, it's on our Facebook page. It was in our newsletter today. We are doing a conversation with Brian Hamill, who is a photojournalist and the author of this new book that I will show to our Zoom audience. It's called Dream Lovers, John and Yoko in New York City. And Brian and a couple other panelists that I will introduce to you in a little bit are going to join us today to talk about his new book and their time and their experiences with John Lennon. It is, of course, a monumental day today. It is 40 years since John Lennon was unfortunately killed outside the Dakota in New York City. And we'll talk a little bit about that today as well. So we're honored and we're excited, and we're loving your book, Brian, and just thrilled to have you join us to talk to us about it today. So Brian Hamill, welcome to the show and welcome to the Zoom.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for doing this.
Solid. Appreciate
I
you doing this.
I want to start with what's behind you. You have a whole, was this set up just for the Zoom today, or is this something that?
No, I'm in the gallery of my ex-wife, Betsy Giacaruso in Rhinebeck, New York, which is like the Laguna Beach on the East Coast.
Okay.
And she's given me several displays of my work over the years.
Awesome. I do want to tell the audience we will have copies of this book to give away. In fact, we have signed copies. Brian, you did a nice little personal message for me and my wife in the front cover of mine. So perhaps we'll have a couple lucky winners at the end of this, and we will allow a little bit of time for questions at the end as well. So later on in the Zoom chat, just write in your questions and we'll try to squeeze those in for Brian or our other panelists. So Brian, why don't you start a little bit by talking about what led you to this book, your time with John Lennon, and why, so many decades later, you finally decided to publish these works.
Well, I had a group of photographs of him from magazine assignments that I had in the 70s. And the publisher got in touch with me after seeing my website His name is James Smith from ACC Art Books out of England. And he asked me if I wanted to do a book, and I said, solid.
Yeah.
So that's where it started. And the assignments, the first one was John Lennon's last concert at Madison Square Garden. The last concert that focused on him, not the one that followed with Elton John. And this was one he did, and that was a group of photographs I did, and there were several photographers next to me, because back in the day, you could get right to the lip of a stage to shoot. So there was lots of photographers. So you'll see similar images from different photographers over the years.
Yeah.
But the second time I photographed him, which was in October of 1972, which was like 3 months after the concert. The concert was on August 30th, 1972 at Madison Square Garden. That was an assignment for Parade magazine. And John Lennon had always been my favorite Beatle. You know, being a Brooklyn guy, I liked the idea that he had a look on his face that said, rub it on your chest, which is a kind way of saying, if you don't like what I'm saying, take a hike. So I always dug him. And also he seemed like the hippest Beatle at the time. And I think he always was the hippest Beatle. George comes in second. And the third time was an assignment for Rolling Stone. And that was John alone at the Dakota. Although I didn't know he was going to be alone until I got to the Dakota, and he said he told me Yoko won't be joining us today because she's busy downstairs in her office. I said, cool. So in a way, it was pretty cool. I got to know him a little better.
Yeah.
But even the first time, when I rang the bell at 105 Bank Street, that's where he lived with Yoko, their first pad together in the city in Greenwich Village, the West Village. Whoop, there goes the light. I'll keep talking.
I can still see you, don't worry.
You can see me? Okay.
Yeah.
We'll try to fix it. And I rang the bell, and I was expecting, having been in the movie business, doing still photography on movies, that there'd be a cluster of people, like a publicist, makeup, hair, assistants. Cool bets. But none of that happened. He opened the door, it was John Lennon. And I looked right at John Lennon. I was like, wow. And he put his hand out and he said, hey, Brian, I'm John. I said, oh, hi, John. And he asked me if I'd like a cuppa. And I'm Irish-American. A cuppa is like a cup of tea. And actually, John Lennon had Irish roots as well. My parents were born in Northern Ireland. And anyway, we proceeded to do these photographs, and they were exceedingly nice. It was just the two of them, which shocked me. There was no makeup, no hair, no BS, just the two of them.
Yeah.
So we proceeded, and then we went up a spiral staircase that was inside the apartment to an adjoining little rooftop. I did some pictures out there. We did some pictures on their bed, and they were cool about everything. They never gave me a time limit. They never said, hey, you got 20 minutes. They never said you got an hour. So I just kept shooting. And they were exceedingly nice, both of them, including Yoko. She was exceedingly nice. And I would never jump down the road to perdition that woman has been through, because that's so lame. Because if anything, she helped liberate John Lennon from a job he didn't want anymore. We've all been in that kind of situation.
Yeah. So the man you're describing, the man who opened his door and came out without a publicist and made you a cuppa, and in another story made you a grilled cheese sandwich, by the way.
Yeah, that was at the Dakota.
Read in the
4.5 years later.
of Brian's book. I mean, this man is just a relatable megastar that was just like you and me. And I think
working class hero.
Yeah, and I think that term "working class hero" is going to maintain a theme in our conversation today. And that
Cool.
leads me to introduce our other two panelists. So I would like to first introduce the sponsor of this festivity today, and a big friend of the radio station and a friend of mine, and that's Julie Laughton of Julie Laughton Design Build here in Laguna Beach. Julie, I'm going to unmute you and bring you on.
Go ahead, Julie. How you doing?
Just press the unmute button there, Julie. Press enter or click the blue button.
I'm blind.
There
I'm
we
blind.
go.
Okay. Hello, Brian. How are
Hey,
you?
Julie. How you doing?
Nice to see you.
So
Good to
thank
see
you,
you
Julie,
too.
for joining this. And then, of course, I think perhaps why a lot of you people know about this event today, we are very, very excited to be joined by a new friend of our radio station. You may have seen our Zoom event with Kathy Valentine about her book last month. And now we've got yet another Go-Go with us on the Zoom today. Gina Schock, I'm so excited to have you here today to talk about some of your experiences with the great John Lennon as well. So I'm going to unmute you and welcome you now, Gina. Press the same blue unmute button that Julie pressed there. There you go.
Hey, hi, everybody. How you doing?
Hey, Gina, thanks for doing this.
Oh, Brian, it's like I don't even want to say a word. I just want to listen to you because, I was like in a daze just listening to everything we're saying, in a trance. Just keep talking.
Oh,
Keep talking.
Well, I want to give some context, and then we will, of course, let Brian tell some more stories for us. But how do you all know each other? Julie, how did you meet Brian back in the day? And Gina, what's your memory of the Go-Go's meeting Brian? Julie, you go first.
Well, I was, my mother took me to New York City and checked me into a woman's hotel, and it was kind of one of those lockdown places. And I met a girl down the hall, and she said she wanted to go to a fun nightclub. So my first Friday night in New York City was Studio 54, and that's where I met Brian. We were both in a little roped off VIP area, and he came right up to me, and we were like best friends from that day on. And boy, the stories and the people we met, and including the people Brian's worked with, it's just in New York City stories. I mean, my God, my favorite time of my life.
Yeah. And Gina, what do you remember?
Not a lot.
That means you were there.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think that we hung out at the same place, because whenever the Go-Go's, the hotel that we always stayed at in New York City,
Mayflower.
Mayflower.
Yeah.
And the bar downstairs, the conservatory, was the hangout. So wherever we went that day or whatever, we usually wind up down there at night. They, close the bar down, and then we'd sit with our group of friends. And I believe you were there, Brian.
Oh, several times.
Yeah.
Back in my drinking days.
Yeah. There was a lot going on.
Gone, but I hung out there.
Yeah, a lot was going on in that bar when we over the years we stayed there, and that's a whole nother story. But yeah, I think that's where we first met.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Gina, while I have you here, I want to take this opportunity and again just remind people who just jumped in. We've got Brian Hamill, who's the photojournalist and author of this new book called Dream Lovers. We're giving away a couple copies at the end of this call. Julie Laughton of Julie Laughton Design Build, and Gina Schock, of course, drummer of the Go-Go's. Talk about your memory in 1980 of your first encounter or almost encounter with John Lennon.
Okay, so this is kind of crazy, but wow, I'll never forget this. We were doing a show in New York City, and we heard, we did our set, came off the stage, and somebody said, John Lennon watched the show, and we were like, oh, I was just getting ready to cuss. Oh my God.
Gina, I'm very proud of you.
Yeah, you know what I was going to say. Yeah, he watched our show, but unfortunately, he didn't stay for the encore, so we didn't get to meet him, but I was pretty knocked out to know that he saw the Go-Go's. And then, after he passed, after he was murdered, the next year, we got a cassette tape from Yoko with a bunch of her songs on it, asking if we would be interested in covering any of her songs. So I thought, wow, they probably talked about us or something, I mean, she knew about the Go-Go's, he came to see us, maybe we were in their conversations occasionally, and it was it's a big thrill, I mean, John Lennon, Yoko.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Quite a thrill.
And I think the person you're talking about is truly a music fan. And Brian, you talk about this in your book. I mean, the fact that John went to a Go-Go's concert, that's just a tip of the iceberg of the other bands and musicians he loved and supported. I would like you to ask you to tell the fantastic story from your foreword about when you almost accidentally called another artist better than the Beatles. You know what I'm talking about from your book? When he played a record for you, I don't want to give it away. He played a record for you. Yeah.
Now I know.
Tell that story.
Well, the light went out again, so I'm going to keep talking.
Okay, we can see you.
But when we went into his living room at the Dakota, there was a jukebox there. And I asked him, could I get some images in front of the jukebox? And he said, sure. Would you like to hear anything? And I didn't want to be a lame and say, yeah, play one of the, play Imagine, or play, So I said, well, do you have any Marvin Gaye? He said, absolutely. I love Marvin Gaye. And he hit the buttons and on came What's Going On. So he played What's Going On, and I was back and I was taking pictures of him, long shots, but I could see from the side that he was singing along with the lyrics of the song. And that was in the day where you couldn't read lyrics on Google and get them, imprinted in your brain. So he obviously had listened to the lyrics of the song several times. In any case, when the song ended, my excitement about him singing along and playing Marvin Gaye provoked me to go up to him and say, that album is the most inventive album of the 70s. And then I wanted to take the words and shove them back into my mouth. I couldn't believe what I just said to John Lennon. The guy had 4 or 5 great albums out, including the 1980 album of the Plastic Ono Band. And it was like a pregnant pause. And I didn't know for a split second, and then I heard, I agree with you, it's a great effing album. And boy, I felt such relief. And how gracious could an artist be but to pay the props that he did to Marvin Gaye? And then he said to me right afterward, and I was trying to cool my road a little bit because I was, and I remembered, because I used to box, and I remembered the famous Cus D'Amato line to me, who's my trainer and manager as an amateur: calmness is strength. So I was trying to get calmness back into my system so I wouldn't behave like a jerk off, in front of John Lennon. And he said, would you like to hear something else? And I said, why don't you play something you dig? And he said, well, I dig them all. I wouldn't be in here. So I just got silent, and then he clicked a few buttons, and on came Shout by the Isley Brothers. And that's a get up and dance tune, but it calmed me. It wasn't Twist and Shout, which they did a cover of. It was just Shout. And believe it or not, I was dancing with my Nikon in place. My Nikon was my dance partner. And John seemed like he knew all the words to that too. So he couldn't have been cooler.
You never expected, when you got the assignment to first shoot his concert and then to actually visit him in his home, you never expected to hang out with the guy, I would guess. You probably expected it to be pretty transactional.
Never. I thought I'd get 10 minutes, be in and out, and there'd be 1 or 2 images in Parade magazine, maybe 1 in Rolling Stone. But he never gave me a time limit. He never said, hey, you got 40 minutes, hey, you got 35. There was no publicist saying, hey, you almost finished. None of that nonsense.
And is your impression, is that how he pretty much was with everybody, you think?
Well, when I walked with him in the streets of the village, that's where the big test was. When he said to me back in 72, October 72, precisely October 13th, there anything else you need in here? And I said, no, you guys want to go for a walk around the neighborhood? And they said, sure. So we walked around the West Village, and they didn't get mobbed. Like, it wasn't Beatlemania time. It was, people coming up and just saying, hey, welcome to New York, that kind of small talk. But then they got asked some really interesting questions, and the both of them showed such humanity. You know, it was beyond just being nice. It was humane, and that's when I really realized, you know, this was a great couple.
Yeah.
And they held hands. You know, they were just nice.
I'll just show a quick spread of the book here.
Ah, that one there, upper right-hand corner. That's them walking in the village. But that was the only negative thing. When John's gesturing for me to go into that shop, if you hold that up again, you see the back of Yoko already entering the shop. It was a sweater shop. And you see, it's sort of dark, but that's her going in. He gestured for me to go in next. We go into the shop. I had a couple of Nikons around my neck. There was a guy laying in a hammock. And when I went in, he went to get up out of the hammock. He made a gesture to get up. And then a split second later, over my right shoulder was John. And the guy started playing Johnny Cool. Like, all right, I'm not going to get up and, like, you know, give special attention to John and Yoko Ono. It was just the opposite of when some celebrity, I've been around celebrities all my life, and sometimes celebrities get engaged by people in the street or in a cocktail place or a bar or something, and they can't shake the fan loose. This was just the opposite. He was trying to play so cool, like he wasn't impressed. And John just stood by the door with his arms folded, observing. And I picked up his vibe, and Yoko wasn't paying attention. She was looking through the sweaters. Another guy came from the back of the store and said, oh no, before the guy came from the back of the store, she turned to the guy in the hammock and said, do you work here? And the guy looked up at her and said, I own it. But he didn't make a gesture to get up out of the hammock. He still stayed there. He had a corny looking hat on. And he just was lame. Another person came from the back of the store, and that fellow was nice, and he engaged Yoko, and they looked through the sweaters together. And John was still there at the door like this with his arms folded. Anyway, Yoko bought the sweater. John took the bag from her. John went out. I went out. Yoko's over my right shoulder. And John turned to me and said, a-hole, meaning the guy. And then he let it go. He didn't run it in the hole. He didn't run the combo in a hole. He just said he let it go.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if Yoko picked up on it.
Again, the guy you're describing is just a relatable everyman who happened to be in the biggest band of all time. And Gina, I wanted to ask if you could touch on a little bit, you know, the inspiration that John was to you, and if you picked up as even an adolescent listening to the Beatles, did you pick up that this guy, you know, this guy's my hero because he's like my parents, he's like everybody I know?
Yeah, I felt that way because, as Brian said, he was the coolest Beatle to me. He was always kind of, you know, rough around the edges, but you knew beneath that was a sweet soul, was a, you know, and, you know, I felt like his voice, you know, it was kind of nasally and all, but it was very soulful. And I always felt like he was unafraid to say whatever was on his mind. I loved that. It was like people I grew up in my neighborhood. We were all the same way. You know, we didn't know a big explanation for whatever we did. We just did it. Everybody knew each other, and it was all cool. I grew up in a blue collar working class neighborhood, and I sort of felt that he was a working class kind of guy. And you know something, Brian, the thing that I love about your book is that the photos are so personal and so intimate, and it really shows, you know, another side. Even if you're not looking, you see another side of him that we weren't used to seeing. So I was really moved by your book. It just shows, I don't know, he's a beautiful guy, you know, but you know, he understood what we were about. I don't know, he was just the coolest Beatle. I always got him. I always gravitated towards him, loved his lyrics, loved his soulful voice. You knew what he was saying was true and honest and coming from the heart. I liked that.
Yeah. And what about you, Julie? You know, another working class hero of mine. Julie wakes up at 4 a.m. every day to start her workday as a contractor in a men's world, I might add, as the only female contractor I've ever met. Was John an inspiration to you?
Well, I think he's the only Beatle that his songs actually like go into your soul. When I listen to him, his music, like Gina says, it's soul. You actually can relate to it. Like there's songs that you can put into moments of your life that makes sense. I mean, it's just part of his music. What he wrote, he makes it. You can relate, and the way he sung personally, it's like Marvin Gaye or anybody that's that talented. It just goes into your bones. I mean, other people you listen to them, but his songs are different. I mean, he was soulful, and his lyrics are amazing. I mean, there's no other way to explain it, but yeah.
He was unafraid to be a real man. You know, he was unafraid to show his beautiful soft side and show that he was also an opinionated guy. You know, I don't know, if you listen to his stuff, you get the full picture of him. But you know what, Brian, your book really knocks me out. I mean, I can't say enough about it, really. I am a huge fan of this book. It's really beautiful.
The photograph
and he had his voice. He had that edgy voice.
Yeah, it was kind of this nasally, edgy voice.
You could always hear John Lennon in the tunes that he wrote. You could always hear him. And in fact, even when he did that song with David Bowie, Fame, yeah. John Lennon's edgy voice and that. And without that edgy voice, a lot of the Beatles stuff would have been pop fluff. But because John Lennon had that edgy street guy voice, and he was an unafraid guy, so he wasn't afraid to take a bite.
His voice was loaded with character.
Yes, exactly.
You had a lot of course, the photos in the book are the main focus, but you had a lot of forewords in your book as well, Brian, and suffixes, or I guess I don't know what the right word is. What goes at the end of the book?
The end of the book?
What's the last thing called? There's the forewords, and then there's the...
Oh, the remembrance.
Okay.
No, the recollection by Dave Palmer.
Yeah, so Dave Palmer wrote your recollection, and you had a bunch of notable people, including Alec Baldwin, write a foreword for your book. So how did you gather this cast of characters for your forewords? And I hope you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about your brother as well, who we just lost, but who wrote a foreword.
I don't mind at all. May he rest in peace. Great guy, special guy. Julie knew him.
I knew Pete. He took me to dinner with Bob Fosse. They had fun with me and made fun of how fast I talk.
Yeah,
he put Bob Fosse across from me, and then it was just hilarious. That's the night I met Warren Beatty in the bathroom. So it was quite an evening.
Wow.
Well, Pete wrote, this was the last thing Pete wrote. It was the last thing that he ever wrote that got published a couple of weeks after he died. May he rest in peace.
It's like full circle.
And, Alec is a friend. Barry Levinson, who's a director, very talented American director. I've done 7 or 8 movies with him. And
Baltimore
Dave
guy.
Excuse me?
Baltimore guy, where I'm from.
There you go. Be more. Love Baltimore. I love people from Baltimore. Great town. And the last guy, recollections, Dave Palmer, I met him when he was like a teenage heartthrob in New Jersey, because he played with a band called The Middle Class. And he went from various bands and actually wrote several songs with Carole King. Oh. He actually he was the lead singer of Steely Dan on the first album. He was the guy who sang Dirty Work. So I know him since 1965, and now he's a photographer, very talented photographer. Mm. And he's got an angelic voice.
My favorite Steely Dan record. Huh? That was my favorite Steely Dan record. Can't Buy a Thrill.
Yes.
That album.
Yeah.
Dirty Work is a masterpiece.
Yes.
Yes.
That's Dave Palmer.
Oh, yeah.
So I know him from 65, and we stayed in touch. And, and we're both sober. So we reconnected several times over the years, different times. But we've always stayed in touch somehow or other.
So talk about the content of the foreword that your brother wrote, Pete. You know, the last thing you said he wrote before he passed away. It's about why John Lennon still matters today. And I
Yes.
think this gets back to the why of why publish this book now, even though, you know, the idea got floated by you and you said yes, there has to be some significance for 2020, the hardest year many of us have ever lived through. Why does John Lennon matter? And what did your brother have to say about that?
Well, he tried to point out that he was very relevant. You know, Pete's idol growing up was Frank Sinatra. So he was a different generation. He was 11 years older than me. And I grabbed Sinatra too early on at Elvis. But Pete, when he did the first interview with John Lennon, was in 1963 with all the Beatles. And they stayed in touch. And Pete always liked him. And he liked his outspokenness because Pete was a columnist and very opinionated. So there were similarities between the two of them and not being afraid to voice their opinion about something.
Yeah.
And so Pete feels, and I still feel the same way, that a lot of John's songs are very relevant today.
Gina, how ahead of his time do you think John was in terms of speaking his mind? Do you think that he was about 40 or 50 years ahead on that one?
Look, you know, everything, I mean, I would just be repeating what Brian said, but yeah, you know, his stuff is relevant now and it will be forever and ever because he speaks about subjects that are important and that doesn't ever go away. You know what I mean? There's certain things you can write about, sing about that in 100 years will probably still make a difference. He was the kind of guy because he was writing from his heart and his mind that it always works. It'll never go away. It will never not be relevant, you know?
Timeless. Mm-hmm. Everything's timeless.
Exactly. He's like, because he's like, I felt like he was like, you know, our moral compass. You know what I mean? That guy was so right on about everything. You know, I could talk about him all day because I mean, he was just, I mean, what can you say? He's John Lennon. I mean, you know, but so brilliant. And anyway, I just feel like he was the conscience of the world in many ways, you know? Mm-hmm. He talked about what needed to be talked about. And those things, as I said, they're all still relevant now. He was, as I said already before, he was unafraid, unapologetic, but he was, again, I'm repeating myself, unafraid to show his soft side, you know, talk about
it's
love.
It's good that you're repeating
about relationships.
He deserves
it. Sorry, would you say, Brian?
Somebody like you to repeat the qualities he had.
Oh my God. Yeah, well, it's just true. It doesn't go away. That doesn't go away. It's always there. And it's on, you know, and it's on vinyl. Well, not, well, yeah, it is too, but the recordings are there forever and ever, you know?
Yes.
The photographs are there forever and ever. You take a look at your book, you get to see another side of him. And you know, people will always be interested. There will always be an interest in John Lennon.
Yeah.
People always ask me, what was your favorite song? And mine is In My Life. Certain people love Imagine.
Of course.
Certain people like Working Class Hero, but I love In My Life. I think it's such a beautifully written song.
That is one of my favorite, like, all-time songs ever. I mean, oh my God, it almost, you know, brings tears to your eyes thinking about it almost, you know? It is so beautiful.
Yes.
Brian, I just one more thing on the forwards. I want to talk about the one your friend Alec Baldwin wrote, which is less about Lennon and more about you. He talks about how he's encountered a lot of photographers in his life, a lot of movie set still photographers, and how some people get it and some people don't. And he was just amazed at your ability to come on set and say, yeah, don't worry, I'm gonna take a couple photos. And 5 minutes later, be on your merry way, but somehow have captured iconic movie images that many of us would know if we saw them, movie posters that many of us would recognize if we saw them. How the heck do you do that? And how did Alec Baldwin realize it?
Well, in my case, being a street guy and growing up in a tough Irish neighborhood and having boxed when I was a kid, it's a matter of heart, not heart in the sense of a romantic thing, but courage. So you know, you have a job of work that you have to do. at the end of the gig, you can't say, well, Alec Baldwin was tough on me. I couldn't shoot the pictures, or Woody Allen was a little shy. So, you got to do your thing, man. That's as simple as that. That's what that's what professionalism is. No matter what you do, you got to do it.
Yeah. How important are, traditional media photographers still today, given that anybody can do it on their phones now? How does the art form still maintain in 2020?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, you're the only one I think who knows the answer to that question.
You know what I think the difference between digital and film photography was back then. The pictures I took of John Lennon, of course I shoot digitally now, but I noticed a lot of photographers who shoot digital nowadays, they're always doing this. They take a picture and then they look at their image that they just shot, and they're blowing several other probably more pertinent kind of imagery. You should always shoot and look at your stuff at the end of the day. Don't try to edit when you're in the middle of doing the job of work that you were assigned to do. So that's the difference. And iPhone people are always doing that. It's the iPhone generation. But, that's where it's at with some people. They just, they're addicted to it. It's like an addiction.
Yeah.
Like the phone is an addiction.
No kidding.
So again, today is obviously an unfortunate day, but an appropriate one for us to be doing this. And just to remind people who are just joining us, I'll remind you again, the book is called Dream Lovers, John and Yoko in New York City, and it is available now. At the end of this, we're going to give away a couple copies signed by Brian Hamill, who's a photojournalist on the call with us. And we've got Gina Schock of the Gos Gos, the Go Gos.
The Ho-Hos. The Ho-Hos.
The Gos it's a weird modern cover band of the Go Gos that you don't want to hear. And we've got Julie Laughton of Julie Laughton Design Build. I was transitioning to the J, Julie, and
That's what
happened. Anyway, the day we're doing this is 40 years to the day that John Lennon was shot. And I want to go through each of you now and your memories of that day. And I'll finish with you, Brian, because you talk about this in your book. And I'll start with you, Julie. What do you remember about December 8th, 1980? And where were you and how did it feel?
I was in college and it was just like shock and sadness, like, wait, what? It didn't make sense. So it was just like a big void. I mean, it was weird. It's like hard to grasp.
Yeah. Gina, what about you?
I was in LA at the time, and I don't remember exactly what I was doing at that moment, but I remember when hearing it, the first thing I thought was, why? Why would someone do this? Why? That's the big question I had. And I just felt like, oh my God, we've lost an important person here. I felt, we've lost a person that is a spokesperson for somebody like myself and so many others. And I was kind of knocked out. I felt like I'd gotten, punched in the face. It was just felt unbelievable. And I just couldn't understand why somebody would do that, you know?
And Brian, finally, you talk about 3 moments in your life thus far in your book that you'll never forget where you were, what you were doing. One of them is 9/11. One of them is when JFK was shot. And the third one is when John Lennon was. Those, so talk about how monumental it was in 1980.
I was sitting on a rocking chair, and we were married then. I'm gesturing to my ex-wife, Betsy. We're in her lovely gallery in Rhinebeck. And my daughter was 3 weeks old, and I was taking care of her that night. And I went to reach, I was going to put an album on because I always listen to albums. But I said, I'll just put the radio on. And it was easier to turn the switch while I was playing corny dad with my 3-week-old daughter, who's now 40 years old and has 2 beautiful kids. We have 2 beautiful grandkids. And when I put it on, it was like a weird kind of like busyness going on. And then the guy got on and said, it's confirmed now, John Lennon is dead. I went, what? It was like, John Lennon is dead? And I had my daughter she was like 3 weeks old, and I had my daughter in my arms, and tears flew out of my eyes. Like, it seemed like they went horizontally and then dropped down, and they dropped down on my daughter. And to this day, those tears will never dry. I mean, it was shocking. So along with when JFK got killed and the Trade Center, and when John Lennon got killed, those are 3 events you know what you were doing in your life, for me anyway.
Yeah. Did you think immediately, you know, given your relationship with him, the work you had done with him, the photos you had shot, did you think I have to do something? Did it spring you to action in any way?
Well, I wanted to spring into action and go down and wait outside the Dakota, like half of New York City did. But I was a new dad, and I was in Rhinebeck, New York, and that it just wasn't feasible. But I went back there many times after I got back to the city, and certainly have paid my tribute to him by walking at the lovely monument that Yoko designed at Strawberry Fields.
Yeah, that's
I'm sure there's thousands of people there tonight.
Yeah, if people on this call have not been there, that's one of the most magical places I've ever been.
Yeah.
People in their acoustic guitars playing John Lennon songs, sitting around in kumbaya in peace. It's the most non-violent corner I've ever been to where something horrendous happened.
Right, exactly.
It's still very special to this day.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. In a little bit here, maybe in about 8 minutes, we want to take some questions from the audience. So if you want to start typing your questions either to me privately or in the waiting or in the main room for Zoom, we'll try to get to some of those for any of our panelists, and we will give some books away. Here's a question I did want to get to, Brian. If John Lennon were still alive today and you had a chance to shoot him today, wherever he lived or whatever he was doing, how would you imagine, if you will, very good, Tyler, how would you imagine
My favorite song.
that photo shoot would look like?
I think he'd have less hair on his head and not give an F about it. He'd probably have a couple of novels under his belt that I will have already read that I discussed with him as I was taking the pictures. And it would be the same no pressure gig that it was the other times. He never rushed me, never said, at one point on the rooftop of the Dakota, his hair was blowing all over the place. I said, John, your hair is blowing all over the joint. He said, no biggie, keep doing what you're doing. So I would think there'd be a lot of stuff to discuss about our current president.
Not from
I'm sure he probably would have written about 10 songs about this administration by now. He's just a special guy, and I think he'll live on in my brain until the day I throw a 7.
Yeah. We got a fair amount of question submissions already, so I'll go ahead and take a couple of these. Someone asked Brian about your photography in Northern Ireland and your experiences up there, if you wouldn't mind talking about that. I'm also Northern Irish by descent, by the way, I should add.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So, and Julie.
I'm Irish
Gina?
too.
All right.
Yes.
Are you really?
Me?
Gina? Yeah.
Am I really Irish?
But are your parents from Northern Ireland?
No, not from Northern Ireland, but I'm Irish. My grandmother, Regina Hill, who I'm named after. And what's really crazy is that the neighborhood I grew up in is called Dundalk, and there's a Dundalk.
Dundalk.
D-A-L-K, Dundalk.
Yeah.
We say Dundalk with my accent. But it's Dundalk is a neighborhood in Baltimore, place in Ireland as well. But I just recently found out, I thought it was German because of my last name, but I am 50% Irish, and
Cool.
from my grandmother. Sorry, but anyway, the Irish thing's happening here. So,
What did they want to know about my Northern Ireland pictures?
Yeah.
I was sent over there in right after Bloody Sunday in February of 1972. And it was before I photographed, a couple of years before I photographed John on the rooftop of the Dakota. but it was cold in Northern Ireland, and it was people had cold feelings in their blood about the British. What they did, they killed all those people, and I ended up hanging around with the IRA. And there was a guy who was like 22 years old at the time. May he rest in peace. His name was Martin McGuinness. He was the head of the IRA in Derry, where 13 people got killed by the British trigger-happy soldiers. And he put me under his wing, but I had connections. My parents being born in Belfast, and cousins that were connected with the IRA. So I had little ins here and there. And I was a young dude, but I had, again, being a street guy, having boxed, having been around celebrities, and which didn't, affect me one way or the other. Hanging around with the IRA was another dimension in my life. And I think I got some pretty dramatic pictures.
Yeah.
They're on my website under photojournalism.
What is your website, by the way? Let's take a chance to mention that.
BrianHamill.com.
Great.
And they're under photojournalism. And then you hit under photojournalism, the Troubles. That's what people who live there refer to them as the Troubles.
Yeah. Gina, this next question is for you. This is from Melbourne, from Rachel in Melbourne, Australia. We're global right now.
Wow.
She wants to know if you're shooting photographs. If you're a photographer still.
Well, I have not been recently, but that's another story. I have to take care of my parents. I mean, I did walk around many years with a camera hanging around my neck. From the time I left Baltimore when I was 21 to the time I drove to LA seeking fame and fortune. And then when the Gos Gos happened, I had a camera and I was shooting constantly. I have a lot of photos that are going to be in a book that comes out next year. So I'm pretty excited about that too, but nothing like what Brian does. Mine's just a band.
Oh, I bet they're fun.
Mine's band stuff.
I bet
Yours is like the real deal. Yours is
All right.
wow.
Gina, is any of your
anyway,
stuff
yeah.
in the new?
I love photography. That's what I collect. In my home, it's all photographs.
Is any of that in the new documentary, the Gos Gos documentary that just came out? Some of your shots?
Oh yeah. As a matter of fact, yeah. The majority of the photos in there are all mine.
Cool.
Which I guess it helped the documentary. But I have so many. I collect a lot of things, and photography is one of my main things. I love.
That's great.
I love it.
And also, Brian, speaking on the subject of photography, we have a few photographers or budding ones on the call who are listening in today, and they want some technical advice from you, a little bit about your work and how you capture the things you do, not necessarily from an emotional level, but I don't know. I don't speak photography, but I guess what the aperture is. Maybe that's what they want to know.
What, the aperture?
I just picked a word.
How much light is on the subject?
Yeah, so do you have any general technical advice you can give on photography?
Have a good sense of anticipation. Don't look down at your camera to see what image you just took. It's like a fighter in the first round of the fight, in the middle of the round, walks over to the monitor to see how good that combination was he just threw, and then he ends up getting knocked out. Don't look at your pictures till you get home and you go through and edit. So have a good sense of anticipation. Try to have a solid sense of the technical craft, but more importantly, the subject you choose to photograph and how it's lit. If it's available light or if you have to light it, that's important. The composition and the light.
Great. We have a question here from Caroline. This is for everybody. Julie, I'm going to go to you and start with you on this one. What is the first feeling that comes to you when you hear John Lennon's music?
Like a warm feeling, like you can relate to him, like you know him. The songs relate to every single person's feelings, so it's a warm feeling.
Gina?
Very relatable. Like Julie's saying, it's just, yeah, I feel like, you know, I'm listening to a friend, you know, talk about what's going on, you know, it's comfortable. It's comforting. I love to hear his stuff. And it also, yeah, and it gets me all fired up a lot of times too, depending on what you're listening to.
Mhm.
You know, it can either make me feel really warm and fuzzy or else like really pissed off and ready to start with somebody, you know?
Are you sure not everything makes you feel that way, Gina?
No, not at all.
And Brian, what about you? Do you have an emotion that comes to mind when you listen to John?
I like his edginess combined with soul.
That's it.
He has a good combination of both that makes the song special. And whether or not you hear his voice clearly defined, and the writing. So the feeling is closeness, like hearing from getting a letter from a friend.
Mhm.
We have some time here at the end, Brian. I was hoping to maybe show a couple images from the book and have you talk about those moments in time. One you mentioned that was pretty special is on the back cover. It's this one of John and Yoko overlooking, I'm guessing, the Atlantic.
No, it's the Hudson River.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
But that's a good guess because it kind of reminds people of the ocean.
Yeah. So tell us about this moment.
I was at the end of the day after the sweater shop incident with the guy in the hammock, and I asked him if there was, you know, the sun was setting. The light was getting pretty October light. If there was any special place that they wanted to go to, and John suggested, why don't we walk over to the end of Bank Street? And the pier then was desolate. It's like, you know, the whole waterfront on the Hudson River in downtown Manhattan has changed. Like everything else in New York, it changes all the time. But they both looked out, and I saw the reflection in John's glasses of the water. And he said, "This river is magical." And that stayed in my brain.
How about the time on the roof at the Dakota, which I think was the second time that you photographed him, right? When he was by himself.
Well, I photographed him at the concert, then in the village with Yoko, and by himself was in the Dakota.
Yeah. How about this chilly roof scene?
That was on the roof. Yeah, the wind was blowing, as I said, and I told him his hair was getting crazy all over the place, and he didn't care. So the kind of graphic images, because I asked him before we went up there. I said, "How is the roof here?" Because I photographed him at the roof on Bank Street, and I photographed him on the bed in Bank Street. I said, "How are the graphics?" And he said, "Great effing graphics." And they were. We went up there. Look, you can see it.
Yeah.
And
Did you guys discuss the
we had the Elvis pin on.
Yeah, that kills me, the Elvis pin.
The Elvis pin, like, and at the end, when we get near the end of it, I said to him, "By the way, was Dylan ever an influence on you?" And he said, "You know, I love a lot of Dylan's songs, great lyrics, wonderful songs. But this guy," and he pointed to the Elvis pin, "this guy was my big influence. This guy maybe want to be a rock and roller."
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think somewhere in your book it said, you know, John said, "Don't worry about copying my style because I copied it from Bob Dylan."
Right. No, that was when I first got up there and it was windy, and I took the cap out of my pocket, out of my coat pocket, and it was a snap open cap. And he doesn't have one on there. That was like an oversized French beret, but I had seen many photographs of him throughout the years with a snap open cap. So when he watched me putting my cap on, I said to him, I was like beating him to the punch. I said, "Sorry, I copied your style." And he just chuckled and smiled thinly. He didn't say anything. But when we finished all those pictures, when it was time for me to, you know, I got enough. he walked me to the door. I had the cap on, I had my gear on, my coat on. Walked me to the door of his 7th floor apartment out to Dakota. He put his right hand on my back and said, he pointed to my cap and said, "Don't worry about copying my style, Brian. I copied it from Dylan." And of course, Dylan's first album, and I didn't recollect that, but Dylan's first album, he has a snap open cap on.
Gina, the next question's for you. Someone asked, who made you want to be a rocker and or a drummer? Who was your biggest influence there?
Oh my God. I've had many influences over the years, but initially, I guess who made me want to become a drummer was probably Charlie Watts and John Bonham. They were my two who I idolized growing up as drummers. And I was also crazy about David Bowie. He was like the ultimate rock star, to me, or one of them. Those were pretty big influences on me. Yeah, growing up.
I can't remember if you mentioned earlier, but in that same story where John came to the Go Go show in 1980, Bowie was there too, right?
Yeah, it was. That's why I was like, man. I went to the VIP room to see who was there, and Bowie was there, and Pete Townsend was there, and Bowie and Coco. He used to have his assistant. That woman Coco was with him everywhere he would go, and then Pete Townsend was there, and we were like, where's John at? And they said that's when we got the news that he had left at the encore. So we were kind of bummed, but it was kind of cool hanging out with those two guys that night.
Well, here's a good question that will get us close to wrapping up here. In one word, how would each of you describe John Lennon? This might be a word you've already used so far in the Zoom, but this is a challenge to summarize his entire being in one word. Julie, can you do it?
Grounded.
Gina?
I need 2 words, and it's going to be soulful rebel.
Well, there's no rules here. Soulful rebel?
Yeah.
Soulful rebel. Brian?
Spectacular.
Awesome. Brian Hamill with Dream Lovers, John and Yoko in New York City. Brian, is there anywhere you'd like people to go specifically to get the book?
Well, I'd like them to go to their local bookstore. That's always where it's at. Barnes and Nobles has it and Amazon has it, but if it's not in your local bookstore, try to implore them to get it.
Someone asked if it's available in Canada. Do we know the answer to that?
I don't. I know Italy just bought the rights to it, so it's in Italy because some Italian friends of mine have purchased it.
Okay. We are going to give away 2 copies, and I will tell you how you can do that right now. If you text our radio station, again, we're KXFM here in Laguna Beach, text 949-715-5936. That's 949-715-KXFM, and just say you'd like a copy of the book. I think we have 2 signed copies.
You can give away 3. I got 3.
All right, 3 signed copies of the book. And, it'd be great if you were local, but if you're not, we'll find a way to get it to you.
I can ship them to you. Don't worry.
Julie's going to personally ship it to you.
Easy.
And
this book is worth getting.
Yeah.
This book is worth getting. Trust me when I tell you. It really is. Oh, hey, man, it is. I told you, it knocked me out. It's sitting on my coffee table. Look, man, it's right here.
My favorite picture is the one when you're sitting at the table with John. So there's so many great pictures. It's amazing. Amazing.
And it's something that you look at it over and over because you find, I don't know, always with great photography, you find other things, you keep finding different things, more interesting things in the shot when you look. I look over and over and I find even cooler things, And
you feel like you're there. The photographs make you feel like you're there too. It's kind of
absolutely neat. It certainly makes you feel that,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Gina and Julie, you guys are each working on your own things, both in different mediums. Do you want to do a quick plug for what you guys have coming out?
I'm working on a book, and it's all about designing and building and how to avoid a nightmare remodel. And I'm doing a little HGTV stuff, but the thing is just my book to share how to survive a remodel is coming out.
I need to get that.
Yeah, I'll do it for you one-on-one.
I have a book coming out next year. It'll be out in the fall of next year, and it's called Made in Hollywood. And it's about my life and my life in the Go Gos. And it's just a lot of shots that people have never seen, and some that you have seen. But it's all in one place. And there's also, I also write. There's like 20,000 words of text. So there's a lot of words as well. So it's kind of a story and photos. But mainly it's a photo book, okay? Because that's what it's about. They wanted some words, so I gave it to them, but they're interesting too. But the photos are what it's about. That's all I can say.
And Gina, you said earlier, when we were speaking earlier, this is one of the hardest things you've ever done is put this whole book together.
Oh my, I never thought I would become an author. But the photos, that was difficult too, because I have so many, and to help to figure out, you starting out with narrowing it down to 600, then narrowing down to 500, then 400, then 3, just getting it to where we have enough, where we have the right amount to send to the publisher, and then sitting down and thinking about trying to remember everything. Whoa, but I was able to, because I am one of those crazy people that I have a daily planner since 1978. And I have every one of them for every year. So that's what helped me put the stories back together and have accurate information. If I couldn't remember, I was looking in there, for dates and places and people, where I was. That helped a lot. But it made me exercise a part of my brain that I hadn't in a long time. So I am grateful to be, laboring over this book, which I'm still not. I'm going to finish tonight, man.
Yeah.
Tonight I finish.
Oh,
Tyler, may I get in a plug?
yeah.
What?
Go ahead.
Tyler, I just want to plug the gallery I'm in, the Betsy Giacaruso Gallery. I know I mentioned it earlier. It's in Rhinebeck, New York. And she's such a talented artist. You guys should go on her website and look at her stuff. And if you ever visit Rhinebeck, pop in and say hello to Betsy, my ex-wife.
Hey, Betsy. Hey, Betsy, how you doing?
Go Betsy.
Hey, hi.
But wait, Brian, where is
Gina, the fact that you're a terrific archivist, that is very important. That's another thing I'll tell photographers. Make sure you archive your stuff. Don't get loosey-goosey with it. Don't smoke another joint and forget where you put the negatives.
So I keep everything in one place. And you know what else I got posters. I have, buttons. Listen to this one. You're going to like this, you guys. In this book, I'm going to include my ticket stub from the first concert I ever went to in 1969, which was Led Zeppelin opening for The Who.
Oh my God.
I have my Woodstock ticket.
What?
I have my Woodstock ticket.
Whoa, that's cool. That's cool.
It never got taken. It's still the same length.
Oh,
$6.
I only have my stub, but the cool thing about it is that on it they spelled lead, L-E-A-D.
Yeah.
awesome. Hey, you guys, this was
Tyler, man, thank you, bro.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brian. Thank you, Gina Schock and Julie Laughton. We had a lot of people comment on the Zoom that they've been in a lot of Zooms over the past 8 months or so, and a couple people said this was the best one. So I feel satisfied about that, and really grateful to you all for participating. Again, Julie Laughton of Julie Laughton Design Build, based here in Laguna Beach. Gina Schock, drummer of the Go Gos. Got a lot going on right now, and excited to see your new book and everything else. And Brian Hamill, photojournalist, author of Dream Lovers, John and Yoko, New York City. Again, we'll give away a couple copies right now, 949-715-5936. Brian, you're a legend, and I'm really glad we got a chance to talk to you about this.
Thank you, and props to Gina and Julie.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate being a part of this so much. I've learned a lot. Thank you very much.
Oh, cool.
Magical. Thank you.
Well, from KXFM Radio in Laguna Beach on 104.7, and you can listen worldwide on our app or on TuneIn or on iHeart at kxfmradio.org. I'm Tyler Russell, and I'll thank you guys again, and we're going to get back to the music over here on our station. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Thanks. Brian is
KXRN LP, Laguna Niguel, Laguna Beach. Member supported
I want to know more.
on 104.7.
KXFM Radio.